Welcome to the Next in Health podcast. I'm Jenny Colapietro, PwC's Vice Chair for Health Industries, working across pharmaceuticals, medtech, payers, and providers.
And I'm Igor Belokranitsky, a principal with PwC Strategy End, where I get to help leading health organizations with their strategies and operating models. And the one topic that we talk about the most on this podcast is how there are certain problems in healthcare, like affordability, like equity, like innovation, that are too big for any one health organization or any one type of health organizations to solve. And instead, we need these ecosystems, these aggregations of different types of players coming together to tackle these problems jointly. And so it could be providers of healthcare, it could be life sciences companies, it could be health insurers, it could be public service agencies, but they need to be able to collaborate. And in order for them to be able to collaborate, a lot of plumbing is needed. A lot of connectivity is needed. And I'm really excited that we're not just talking about this, but we're actually creating some of those connections, some of this plumbing to allow for this trusted collaboration to take place. And today we're very excited to talk about Flex Connect. And Flex Connect is one way to help bring some of these health ecosystems together. And we're really excited to have two of the architects of Flex Connect on the podcast with us. We have Katherine Buckley, who's a principal in the regulatory risk and compliance team, and Tyler Jorgensen, who's a principal in our customer transformation team. So Katherine and Tyler, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Igor. Happy to be here.
Yep. Thanks, Igor. Excited to be here.
So maybe let's start with the why. The challenge that you've set out to solve is to create better collaboration, communication between pharmaceutical life sciences companies and providers of healthcare. So what specific problems are you solving out there with Flex Connect?
Sure. So in the pharmaceutical industry, and when you think about pharmaceutical products, the companies who make those products have information on how those products should work, what patients should be getting those products, and how to make sure that those products are working for those patients. So the connection between a healthcare provider and a pharma company is really important. And in the industry, there are different roles in the pharma company to connect with those healthcare providers. Some of those most important roles are things like sales reps and medical science liaisons. During COVID and even before COVID, access to healthcare providers by those roles was decreasing over time. And what we were trying to solve was a way for those physicians to connect with those individuals and those individuals to proactively, when appropriate, reach out to the healthcare providers. And so when we looked around, we thought chat is the perfect opportunity for that, especially if you look around the globe. Chat platforms are super important for how society connects. And so we wanted to enable that in the pharma industry as well.
That's great. Okay, so that's for why. Now let's talk about the what. Let's talk about Flex Connect. What is this product and what does it do?
Sure. So Flex Connect is designed to enable compliant communications between pharma companies and healthcare providers using those chat platforms that I mentioned before. In particular, we have enabled the connection with Line, SMS, WhatsApp, and iMessage to begin. And the intent there is to meet the HCP where they're at. As I mentioned earlier, physicians, like society in general, is using chat platforms more and more to enable day-to-day communications with your colleagues, in some cases your patients, as well as just your family and friends. And so if HCPs are already using this platform, we wanted to meet them where they were at. So Flex Connect is designed to drive those connections between pharma companies and those HCPs. And again, all while maintaining compliance.
Really helpful explanation and a really interesting potential. So you sort of explained conceptually how it would work. Could you give us some examples of how organizations are actually implementing it and what they're able to do with the Flex Connect platform?
Sure. So as we look at some of the companies who are using chat to go to market, there are a few key things that they are doing. First is they are going to market as a team. You're not just simply having one individual reach out to the HCP and have a conversation. The reality is in the market right now, pharma companies have several field teams out there. So I mentioned sales reps and MSLs before, but you also have teams like access specialists. So people who are trying to make sure that HCPs understand how to get the product to their patients. You also have teams like health economics and outcomes research specialists who are having conversations with HCPs who have specific roles on formulary and other topics like that. So one leading practice that we see in the market is making sure that those teams can communicate to the HCP through a single portal. So rather than having individual relationships with each of those people at the pharma company, the HCP is able to reach out through one portal and reach the people that they need to reach at the right time. Additionally, pharma companies are using chat to distribute content. Chat platforms are a great way to communicate content that's been approved. One of the challenges in the past when it came to chat platforms like SMS is sales reps or other teams may download something and then send it through SMS. That gives less control to the pharma company on what is actually being sent. It's hard to monitor, and it's also difficult to remove the content over time. So what FlexConnect does is it enables the sending of approved content by connecting with content management systems where pharma companies manage their approved content. So going to market as a team and using the platform to send content are some of the leading practices that we're seeing right now. Additionally, it's important to maintain the appropriate compliance processes when it comes to this. And so I think, Katherine, you may have more insights into what those requirements may be.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Transparency and trust in the communications that occur between doctors, pharma companies, patients, and pharma companies is critically important, right? And so it's a big part of ensuring that and having an ecosystem that supports not only, to Tyler's point, the sharing of information that has been approved by the company, but also having a mechanism, because the regulators are interested, a mechanism for being able to monitor and demonstrate that the company is interacting with healthcare professionals and patients in a compliant way. So that's an equally important part of thinking about the ecosystem that we've assembled as well.
So to help our audience just understand this even more, can you share just a couple use cases for FlexConnect?
Sure. So one of the recent use cases was a pharma company in Japan. They wanted to drive better relationships between medical science liaisons and KOLs. Key opinion leaders is KOL. So when you're thinking about KOL engagement, you want to be reaching out to them as often as possible, making sure that they feel like a valued stakeholder in your relationship. And so they actually were talking to these stakeholders, these KOLs, and they actually mentioned that they wanted to use chat. And in particular, in Japan, they wanted to use Line in order to communicate and drive basic day-to-day communications, making arrangements for in-person communications. In particular, here, they're arranging their attendance at conferences and their speaking at conferences was something that they felt would be super valuable to be driven through the chat platform. So in this case, the pharma company launched FlexConnect and they used communications through Line to maintain their relationships with the KOLs, gave us one place that the KOLs could reach out to, not just their typical MSL who they may have a relationship with, but also the sales rep at that same company. And so through this, they were able to drive better engagements with those KOLs, be more responsive to questions they had. And the KOL didn't have to download anything new. They were able to just friend the pharma company in Line and drive their communications there.
That's a great example, and I really appreciate you making it real for us. Katherine, I want to go back a little bit to the trust topic that you brought up and again, ask for a little bit more detail about what are the specific trust issues that we have to be mindful of that arise when you have these kinds of communications. Who are the stakeholders that are sort of looking over your shoulder? And how does FlexConnect address some of those issues?
It's a great question. I mean, trust is really critical in our industry, right? Whether that's trust in clinical trial data or trust that pharma companies and doctors are having fair and balanced, truthful communications. In my 20 plus years working in this space, there's certainly been increasing awareness in the compliance community of the Department of Justice and the Office of the Inspector General, their expectations of pharma companies and med device companies and of their compliance teams to have a level of visibility into these types of conversations that we're talking about. So to understand who's connecting with whom, what kinds of communications are being shared, what content's being shared, and is it being done in a way that's in compliance with all the regulations out there? There's been expectations in place over the years as corporate integrity agreements have been implemented company to company that really focused on sort of email and call notes. And with some of the recent requirements coming out of the Department of Justice, they're really setting the expectation that as companies think about conducting business over chat, that to the greatest extent possible, they want communications that are accessible and preservable, all getting to this concept of really demonstrating trust in how we're going about doing that type of a business conversation. And really, Flex Connect solves that challenge by connecting, as Tyler mentioned, right, to existing platforms that are already alive and well in the ecosystem, and doing it in a way that builds that trust and transparency throughout the community as well.
That's great. Well, as we look to the future, can you share a little bit about the future roadmap for Flex Connect and where do you see the product expanding?
Sure. So as we look forward, we see Flex Connect as a foundation for communications with HCPs between pharma companies and HCPs. It can be that hub that enables a whole team to go together. So as we think about the future, we are thinking about other platforms that we may connect to. In addition, there's the concept of using generative AI to communicate with the doctors and to provide them the information that they need. So you could imagine a situation where a doctor sends in a message and pharma companies have learned from the way they've communicated that humans have communicated using chat capabilities to give a response to those doctors in a 24/7 capability. Or you could also imagine enabling medical science liaisons or med info teams to gain access to that deep library of content that pharma companies have in a real-time manner to then answer those questions. So generative AI may not be sending the response directly to the HCP, but it would enable a response to be created that is then vetted by a human and sent out to the HCP, again via chat using the chat platform, but could be built directly into a tool like Flex Connect. So those are a couple of things that we're looking at building in to make the tool more powerful and to enable the pharma companies who use it to be more effective in the market.
Katherine and Tyler, thank you for joining us today and telling us about Flex Connect. It was a great conversation. Really appreciate the specific examples. And here at PwC, where our mission is to build trust in society and solve important problems, it's always exciting to meet our colleagues that are building trust in society and solving an important problem. And for our listeners who want to learn more about Flex Connect, they can just search for PwC Flex Connect, and that's the first thing that pops up. So really appreciate the conversation. For more on these topics and other health industry insights driven by policy, innovation, and care delivery changes, please subscribe to our Next in Health podcast. And be sure to listen to the older episodes as well. Until next time, this has been Next in Health.
This podcast is brought to you by PwC, all rights reserved. PwC refers to the U.S. member firm or one of its subsidiaries or affiliates, and may sometimes refer to the PwC network. Each member firm is a separate legal entity. Please see www.pwc.com/structure for further details. This podcast is for general information purposes only and should not be used as a substitute for consultation with professional advisors.